I worked 5 jobs at the same time to support my girlfriend through college, but when she succeeded, she left me. My name is Jason Aldrin, and I didn't think twice about breaking myself to build up someone I loved. I gave up everything time comfort dreams so she could chase hers. And when she made it, she didn't just forget me, she left me behind like I was never part of the story. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Ethan's Way. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. I was 22 when Lily looked me in the eye and said she wanted to go to law school. Her voice cracked just a little when she said it, like she didn't fully believe she had the right to want something that big. I still remember the way her hands clutched her coffee cup that day, Knuckles' white eyes flicking away from mine. She was brilliant and she knew it, but brilliance doesn't pay tuition. Her parents were kind people, but kind doesn't cover the $45,000 a year for out-of-state law school. They did what they could, but it wasn't enough. I'll figure something out, she whispered that night. Maybe I'll defer. Maybe I can take a gap year, and I cut her off. No, you're going now. Jason, I'll take care of it. She cried into my chest that night like I had handed her the moon, and for a while I believed I had. The next morning, I took a red pen to my calendar and began erasing my life. I had one full-time job at a warehouse already. That paid rent for the tiny apartment we shared, but it wouldn't be enough for her tuition or books, so I added a night shift at the gas station, then 2 part-time gigs walking dogs in the early mornings and delivering groceries on weekends. By the end of the month, I'd picked up a 5th repairing busted tech on Craigslist, 5 jobs, 7 days a week. 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night on the good days. I kept a log of every dollar I earned. I made it a game beat last week's income, find an extra gig. I told myself it was worth it. Every time I saw her buried in her books, every time she kissed me and said thank you, I believed it. But belief has a cost, and mine was piling up fast. Within 3 months, I was falling asleep standing up in the warehouse. 6 months in, I started coughing up blood. By month 9, I had stopped visiting my parents. My friends thought I'd disappeared, but I didn't care. Lily was thriving. She'd talk to me about cases she was studying, professors she admired. I argued with my ethics professor today. She laughed once. He said I was ruthless. I smiled and kissed her forehead. She didn't notice I was swaying on my feet. Then something began to shift. It was subtle at first, fewer texts during her breaks, more canceled dinners. Her clothes started to change, sleeker, sharper. She stopped letting me drop her off at campus. I chalked it up to stress. Law school was intense. I told myself not to be insecure, but insecurity has a funny way of knocking when your soul's already exhausted. One night I came home and found her sitting on the couch laptop, open eyes bright. She was talking to someone on Zoom, laughing. I hadn't heard her laugh like that with me in weeks. When she noticed me, her face stiffened. "Can you give me a second?" she asked. I stood in the hallway staring at the drywall for 21 minutes. She never told me who it was. Still, I kept working. I was too tired to argue, too proud to admit the truth crawling in my gut. I told myself, she just needs time. She's under pressure. She still loves me. But part of me already knew I was building a ladder she'd climb right out of my life. I used to think love was measured in grand gestures. But it turns out real love is in the quiet exhaustion of doing things no one sees. And that's what those 5 jobs became, my invisible devotion. My schedule was brutal. Up at 5 a.m. to walk 5 dogs around the neighborhood before the sun rose. Warehouse shift from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Quick shower and protein bar in the car. Deliver groceries from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Then the graveyard shift at the gas station 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. And in between fixing phones and laptops, burned fingers, sore eyes, tired hands. Every night I'd come home and she'd be asleep, books spread out like a shield around her. I'd watch her for a second, peaceful, untouchable, and then collapse next to her reeking of oil dog fur and sweat. Sometimes I didn't even remember falling asleep. But she did. At least, she used to. "Why are you doing all this?" she'd whisper into my neck some mornings. "Because I believe in you," I'd mumble, not even fully awake. And I did. I believed in her the way a soldier believes in the cause, the kind of belief that makes you walk barefoot across glass if it means victory. I didn't realize she stopped believing in me. It wasn't dramatic at first, just subtle changes. She started pulling away when I tried to hold her hand. She kept her phone face down even when she was home. When I asked how her day was, her answers got shorter. Fine. Just tired. Busy. She was busy. Too busy to go grocery shopping. Too busy to watch a movie together. Too busy to eat dinner with me even if I brought it right to her. I thought maybe I was failing her, so I doubled down, tried to be more thoughtful, left notes in her lunch, brought her favorite tea, folded her laundry before she asked. But each time her smile felt thinner, her thank you more robotic. I'll never forget one night in particular. It was her birthday. I had begged for an early shift at the warehouse just so I could take her out. I made a reservation, nothing fancy, just her favorite Thai place. I wore my cleanest shirt, even shaved. She came home at 7 p.m. and looked surprised to see me waiting. I got us dinner, I said, holding out a flower I bought with tip money. She blinked. Oh, I already ate. Already? My classmates brought food to the study room. I didn't think you'd be home this early. I stood there like a fool holding that flower like it meant anything. She saw the disappointment and added, Jason, don't make this a big deal. It's just dinner. But it wasn't just dinner. It was the 1,000th small thing I had sacrificed for her, and the first she didn't even notice. That was the night I realized something terrifying. She didn't need me anymore. And worse, she didn't want me around. She was climbing higher, faster, smarter. And I was still covered in grease and dog hair and burnout. I had become inconvenient. One night while fixing a cracked iPad screen at 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A photo from a mutual friend, Lily, at a bar laughing with classmates, arm in arm with a guy in a button-up and a trust fund grin. I stared at that photo until the screen dimmed. Then I stared some more. The next morning I asked her calmly, "Who's he?" She didn't deny anything, just rolled her eyes. "He's a classmate, and the arm around your waist. He's just friendly." Friendly. The word stung like acid, but I didn't yell, didn't throw anything, didn't walk out. Instead, I went to work like always, smiled at customers, carried boxes, pet the dogs, told myself I could fix this if I just kept going. But what I didn't understand yet was this: you can't fix someone's growing distance by bleeding more. Sometimes the more you give, the more they forget what you're worth. And that was only the beginning. There's a special kind of pain that doesn't scream, it just lingers. That's how it felt watching the person I loved slowly treat me like a ghost. And the worst part, I still showed up, still kept giving, still told myself, this is just a phase. Lily was halfway through her second year when she stopped calling me by pet names. No more babe, no more love, just Jason, or worse, nothing. She'd walk through the door, drop her bag, and go straight to the bedroom with her laptop. No hello, no smile, just the sound of keys tapping and earbuds in. I started leaving meals on the counter for her. Sometimes she ate them. Sometimes they stayed there until I had to throw them out. I became background noise in my own home, a living, breathing ATM with a mop. When we did talk, it was about bills, schedules, or something she needed. Never about me, never about us. One day, I asked, "Do you still love me?" She blinked like the question came from a stranger. What kind of question is that I just need to know? She didn't answer. She just turned back to her laptop, and that silence was louder than any screaming could have been. I told myself she was just stressed, that law school was consuming her, that she'd come back to me when the pressure was gone. But then came the ultimate sign I was no longer part of her world, her graduation. I found out she was graduating a week before it happened, not because she told me, because I overheard her on a call with her mother. "I picked up the cap and gown today. Can't believe it's already here," she said, laughing. My stomach dropped. When she got off the call, I asked graduation. "Oh, yeah, it's next Saturday. That's amazing. I'll make sure I get the day off." She hesitated. Then the bomb dropped. "Jason, I didn't add you to the guest list." My throat went dry. "What? It's just there are limited seats, and I thought it'd be better if my parents came. They haven't seen the campus yet." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. I didn't say a word. I just nodded, stood up, and walked into the bathroom. Locked the door, sat on the floor, and I cried, hard, the kind of crying that twists your insides like a soaked towel, because I realized I had paid for a front row seat to her future, and she didn't even want me in the room. That Saturday, while she was walking across the stage in her cap and gown, probably smiling for photos, I was restocking cigarette shelves at the gas station. Customers came and went. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me, and all I could think was, what was it all for? Later that day, someone sent me a photo Lily with her parents holding her diploma. She looked radiant, happy, complete. And in that photo, there was a man beside her, the same guy from the bar, arm wrapped casually around her waist. I confronted her that night, waited until she walked through the door, diploma in hand. I saw the photo. She looked exhausted, not guilty, just annoyed. I didn't think it mattered anymore. She said, "What does that mean?" "It means I've changed, Jason, and you haven't." She said it like a verdict, like a sentence handed down from a judge. Ironic considering that's what she wanted to become. "You said I was your world," I whispered. "You were?" She replied. "But people outgrow things, Jason." She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She just walked into the bedroom and closed the door. I sat on the couch staring at the dim hallway. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I realized then that I'd been clinging to a memory of Lily, not the person she had become. But the worst realization, she didn't leave me in a dramatic blaze. She just faded, like I was a chapter in her story she didn't want to reread. If you were in this situation, would you forgive or take revenge? Comment below to let us know. People think heartbreak happens in a single moment, one big betrayal, one brutal lie. But mine happened in silence, in the way Lily stopped looking at me like I mattered, in the way I stopped looking in the mirror because I couldn't stand the man who let himself be used. After the graduation fallout, I still stayed. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I could fix it. Maybe I was afraid to admit I had wasted years of my life on someone who no longer cared. Or maybe I was just scared to be alone. But the thing is, you can be lonelier, sleeping next to someone who doesn't love you, than you ever are sleeping alone. She came home later and later, and when she was home, she was somewhere else in her head. I stopped asking questions, stopped trying to make dinner, stopped reaching for her at night. We became roommates, strangers in the same apartment, and then one day, the mask dropped completely. She had just walked in wearing a crisp blazer and heels I'd never seen before. Hair done, nails done. She looked like the woman I used to dream about, except now I wasn't part of the dream. "Where are you headed?" I asked. "Interview, law firm downtown." "No heads up." She shrugged. It came up last minute. I nodded slowly. Then I dared to ask something I hadn't in a long time. "Want me to pick you up?" After she looked at me like I just asked to carry her bag in public. "That's okay. Someone else is giving me a ride." "Who?" She hesitated, then said his name, and everything in me went still. The guy from the photos, the arm around the waist guy, the one she swore was just friendly. I didn't say anything, didn't scream, didn't accuse. I just said, "Got it," and I walked out of the apartment, out of the building, out into the cold air that stung my face harder than any slap ever could. That night, I didn't go to work, didn't go home either. I sat at a park bench until sunrise, no phone, no music, just me watching the world wake up while I quietly fell apart. I thought about all the jobs I worked, all the days I didn't eat so she could, all the times I lied to my parents about how great things were, and I realized she didn't destroy me in one moment. She dismantled me piece by piece, and I let her. When I finally went home, she wasn't there. Her shoes were gone. Her side of the closet was empty, no note, no goodbye, just the echo of my own stupidity in the walls. I stood in that apartment surrounded by the weight of everything I gave up, and for the first time in years I let the anger in, not rage, not fury, just pure simmering betrayal. It didn't burn hot, it burned steady. I knew then I could either keep being the guy people walked over, or I could rebuild not to win her back, not to make her jealous, but to remember who I was before I gave everything away. So I grabbed a trash bag, threw away every piece of her I could find, her old textbooks, her favorite mug, the scarf I bought her that winter we couldn't afford heat. Gone. And then I stood in the center of that hollow apartment breathing deeply. It was the first time in months I felt air in my lungs that wasn't soaked in desperation. This was the beginning, not of revenge, but of resurrection. The day she left, something inside me died, but what rose from those ashes wasn't weakness, it was clarity, and clarity doesn't cry, it builds. I moved out of the apartment within a week. There was no reason to stay, too many ghosts in the hallway, too many memories soaked into the furniture like mildew. I rented a tiny room above a tire shop, no kitchen, one window, peeling paint and creaky floors, but it was mine. No trace of her, no reminders, no expectations, just four walls and a chance to rebuild. I quit 4 of the 5 jobs, not because I couldn't handle them, but because I finally realized I'd been handling too much for the wrong reasons. I kept the tech repair work. It was quiet, flexible, something I could build on. And for the first time in years, I started doing something that wasn't for anyone else. It was for me. But rock bottom doesn't let you up without a fight. Money was tight. My health was shot. I had bags under my eyes that looked permanent. I couldn't sleep without waking up gasping. And then came the worst of it. I found out she had started dating the law firm guy publicly. Photos, comments, tagged dinners and wine nights, a curated life that didn't include the person who paid for the degree hanging in her office. I stared at those images, every single one a knife. But I didn't rage. I just looked at them and said aloud to my empty room, never again. I enrolled in an online course IT certification. Cost me most of my savings, but I treated it like gospel. I studied between repair jobs, stayed up late taking practice tests, taught myself programming from YouTube videos. I didn't tell anyone, not even my parents. This time my climb would be silent. No one to cheer for me, no one to betray me, just me and the work. 2 months later, I passed the certification. 4 months after that, I landed a part-time role at a startup managing internal systems. Low pay, but it was my foot in the door. By year's end, I was full-time, benefits, desk with my name on it, team that respected me, not for what I could give them, but for what I knew, and I kept going. I built a small network of clients for tech support on the side. Eventually partnered with 2 other guys from the startup to launch our own firm. We called it Threadline Solutions. And within 18 months, we had 12 employees, 2 investor offers, and 1 seed round closed. I was finally making real money, driving a used but clean car, wearing shirts without stains, sleeping more than 4 hours a night. But here's the thing. None of that felt as satisfying as the moment I received that email. Subject line interview request, sender Lily Whitmore, position applied legal advisor, Threadline Solutions. I stared at that email for a long time. The resume was attached, impressive, top of her class, 3 internships, a small law firm stint, and then like fate wrapping itself in irony, a closing line, passionate about helping small businesses navigate legal challenges with clarity and fairness. Fairness. That word hit me like a wave. I didn't reply right away. I sat with it for 2 days, read the resume 5 times, Googled her name again. She hadn't changed much in photos, still sharp, still calculating behind the eyes. But I had changed, and that made all the difference. I accepted the interview, not out of spite, not out of longing. I wanted to see her face. I wanted to feel what it meant to not need her anymore. And when she walked into that office, God help me, it was exactly what I hoped for. She didn't recognize me, at least not at first. She sat across from me, hands folded, professional smile on her face. Then her eyes squinted, just slightly. Jason, I smiled. Hello, Lily. There are moments in life when the universe doesn't just hand you closure, it presents it to you like a scene from a perfectly directed film. You don't expect it, you don't ask for it, but there it is, staring at you, waiting to see what you'll do. When Lily walked into the conference room that afternoon wearing a tailored navy suit and an expression carved from composure, I knew instantly this was one of those moments. She didn't flinch when she saw me, but she paused, just for a beat, long enough to show that she hadn't been expecting this. Jason, she said, blinking twice, voice catching on the second syllable. I didn't know that I'd be the one interviewing you. I leaned back in the chair, a small smirk ghosting across my lips. Yeah, life's weird like that. She stood there for a second longer, as if recalibrating. Her posture adjusted slightly, and she gave a careful, almost respectful nod. I didn't expect to see you again, she said, voice steady. Now, that makes 2 of us. There was a long breath between us. The air didn't move, but it shifted. I looked down at the resume in front of me, printed on crisp ivory stock, the ink still fresh enough to suggest she'd recently updated it. On paper, she was qualified degrees from top schools, impressive case studies, leadership roles. Every line told the story of someone who had rebuilt themselves brick by brick. But paper doesn't capture the past. It doesn't remind you of cold silence on the other end of the phone, or the way someone leaves without a word after everything you've done for them. I glanced back up. So I said, keeping my tone professional, what made you interested in Threadline? Lily sat down across from me, folding her hands neatly on the table. Her voice when she spoke was calm, controlled even. "I've followed the company for a while," she said. "You're solving real problems for real businesses. I admire that." I offered a polite smile, but inside I was dissecting her words, watching for any cracks in the polished presentation. She continued, "I've also been looking for a workplace that values collaboration, one where junior staff aren't just treated like stepping stones." Ah, that part stung, because that was exactly how she had treated me all those years ago, like a platform to stand on until she could jump higher. There was a beat of silence before I asked, "Tell me something." She tilted her head, slightly waiting. "Do you remember the day you left?" I asked. "No goodbye, no message, just gone." Her expression faltered. "I do," she said quietly, her eyes briefly falling to the table. I let the silence stretch just long enough. "What happened, Lily?" She didn't answer right away. Her fingers tensed slightly around each other. Then she let out a breath, a slow, honest one. "I was scared," she said finally. I frowned of what she looked up, and for the first time since she walked in, I saw the woman behind the resume. Not the candidate, not the polished professional, just her. "Of who I was becoming," she said, "of how much I needed you, of how much I had used you." That word "used" sat heavy between us. "I didn't know how to face you," she continued. "You gave me everything, the first job, help with tuition, the referrals, the belief I didn't even have in myself." Her voice cracked slightly, but she steadied it. "I convinced myself I had outgrown you," she said, "because it was easier than admitting how guilty I felt, easier than confronting the truth that I took and didn't know how to give back." I didn't interrupt her. For once, I let her speak freely. I told myself, "You'd be fine," that you were strong enough to move on, but I thought about reaching out so many times. I even wrote an apology letter last year, but I couldn't bring myself to send it. I stayed silent, watching, and now I asked. She inhaled, held it, then exhaled again. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," she said. "I saw the job opening, and I thought, maybe I could start over somewhere, right? Maybe do something meaningful." The Lily I remembered had been brilliant, but immature, charming, but self-centered. She had a talent for reading people, but lacked the patience to truly care about what she saw. Now, sitting here, she looked different, not just older, more aware, less defensive. It was surreal. This was the same person who once looked through me like I was glass, yet now she was sitting across from me, struggling to hold my gaze for too long. I wanted to hate her. I really did, but I didn't. The truth was, the pain she left me with had already done its job. It taught me boundaries, taught me how to stop bleeding for people who only knew how to take. What remained now wasn't bitterness. It was clarity. "You hurt me," I said quietly. She nodded. "I know, more than you probably realize." "I do realize," she whispered. "Now I do. But here's the part that took me a long time to understand," I said, leaning slightly forward. "I let it happen. I thought sacrifice was proof of love, that giving everything made me valuable." She swallowed hard, and I saw her eyes start to mist. "I never stopped being proud of you," I added, "but I stopped needing your approval to be proud of myself." There was nothing more to say after that. The room fell into a still mutual silence, one no apology could break, but no resentment needed to fill. She looked down, then back at me, nodding slowly. "I understand if this changes your decision," she said softly. "It already has." There was no anger in her expression, no bitterness, just a quiet acceptance. I stood and walked toward the door, holding it open. "Thank you for coming," I said. She stood too, gathering her bag and documents. At the doorway, she turned once more. "Jason." Her voice was fragile now. "I really am sorry." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years I believed her. But that didn't mean I'd bring her back into my world. Some doors aren't meant to be reopened. Some lessons are meant to stay with you, not to hurt you, but to remind you how far you've come. And as she walked away, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt released. She walked out of the room, and I didn't look back. Not because I was trying to be cold, but because I didn't need to anymore. Some chapters don't end with slammed doors. They end with quiet clicks, locks that turn not in anger, but in peace. After that interview, I didn't think about Lily much. Not in the way I used to. The sleepless nights, the long hours wondering where I went wrong, the crushing silence that used to fill the space between thoughts. It was all background noise now. She had once taken up every corner of my mind, but now she was a quiet footnote in a chapter I no longer reread. That evening, after everyone had left the office and the building was wrapped in calm, I sat alone at my desk. I opened her resume again, not as the man who had loved her, but as the professional I'd become. She was impressive. The degrees were legitimate. The roles she'd held were relevant. She'd clearly worked hard to rebuild herself. But I wasn't hiring for a second chance. I was hiring for trust. And trust, that's not something you offer back like a gift. It's something earned over time with consistency and care. No matter how sincere her apology had been, something in me knew I could never let her close again. Because when someone breaks you, no matter how healed you are, you never forget the shape of their hands. The next morning, I sat down with a cup of coffee and drafted a simple email. No bitterness, no passive-aggressive undertones, just a professional, measured rejection. Thank you for your time, Lily. After careful consideration, we've decided to move forward with other candidates, wishing you all the best in your continued journey. I read it twice, then hit send, and for the first time in years, I felt lighter, not relieved because I had rejected her, but because I had chosen me. That week, I didn't mention her to anyone. No water cooler stories, no sly jokes. I didn't bring it up over drinks with old friends or stay up late dissecting the encounter in my head, because it wasn't about her anymore. It was about me, how far I'd come, how I'd learned not to bleed for people who wouldn't hand me a bandage. But life has a strange sense of humor. 2 weeks later, I saw her again. It was at a networking event on the rooftop of some upscale downtown hotel. String lights, polished concrete, overpriced cocktails, the kind of scene that tried too hard to look effortless. I was speaking with an investor smiling at some joke he made about startup chaos when I caught sight of her across the patio. Lily. She was laughing politely at someone's story, a glass of wine in hand, her other arm tucked casually around her waist. She looked relaxed, but the moment her eyes found mine across the crowd, her face shifted, not dramatically, just enough. Her gaze dropped quickly, and she turned her body ever so slightly away. I didn't go to her, didn't wave, didn't smile. Later, I passed by her on the way to the bar. Not to engage, just to feel the quiet satisfaction of walking past the person who once made you feel invisible and feeling absolutely whole. That night, I went home and opened the windows, let the city breeze drift in. I didn't cry, didn't sit in reflection or sadness. I just stood by the sill breathing. And for once, it didn't feel like recovery. It felt like living. There's something strangely beautiful about surviving someone's worst version of themselves. But what's even more powerful is when they see that not only did you survive, you thrived. The months that followed were a blur of momentum. Threadline landed 3 new major clients back to back. Our team grew. We expanded into a bigger office space, one with real windows, real coffee, and room to breathe. I brought on a new legal advisor. Her name was Renee. From the start, she impressed me. She asked questions most people were afraid to ask. She offered ideas without ego. She didn't push. She listened. And slowly I realized that she reminded me of everything Lily wasn't. Renee was consistent, empathetic, real. There were moments when I caught myself comparing the two. Out of habit mostly. But the thought never stayed long. Because I wasn't searching for someone to replace Lily. I wasn't filling a void. I wasn't healing anymore. I was building a life that didn't revolve around proving my worth to someone else. People always say time heals, but I've never fully believed that. Time just gives you distance. What you do with the space, that's what defines healing. I chose to use mine as fuel to grow, to build a business, to create a version of myself that no longer begged to be seen but commanded respect without shouting. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to win. I just needed peace. And I found it, not by forgetting the pain, but by choosing what came next. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting. I was leading. Sometimes it's clean, quiet, professional. It's not about watching someone fall apart. It's about watching yourself no longer fall apart at the mention of their name. It's not about destroying them. It's about realizing they no longer have power over you. Threadline was thriving. We had just closed another round of funding, moved into a bigger space, floor-to-ceiling glass walls, steel accents exposed beams that screamed "We made it." I was no longer a guy chasing gigs with a half-broken laptop and a $5 notebook. I had departments now, payroll, operations, a development team that brainstormed like family and built like warriors. And for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I wasn't staying up at night calculating which bill I could delay. I had stability. And maybe the most unexpected part, I still lived simply. Same one-bedroom apartment with the creaky floorboards. Same chipped coffee mug I found at a thrift store years ago. Same corner of the couch where I'd fall asleep reading code dreaming big. I still fixed laptops on weekends, not for money, but for the satisfaction of doing something with my hands. A reminder of where it all started, of who I used to be, before people like Lily broke me and before I built myself back without her. Lily had become just a ripple in my memory, no longer a wound, more like a scar I could trace without flinching. But sometimes even scars itch. Sometimes echoes remind you of the silence that taught you things. I had learned how to set boundaries, how to say no without guilt, how to stop contorting myself to be lovable to people who only saw me as useful. Then one afternoon, an email popped up in my inbox. Subject: legal advisory opportunity, freelance proposal sender Lily Whitmore. I didn't flinch, didn't tense up. I just paused. I leaned back in my chair and opened it, not out of nostalgia, not out of anger, just simple curiosity. She'd attached a one-page proposal, said she admired the direction of Threadline, said she respected the way I'd handled our last conversation. She offered reduced rates for freelance case-by-case legal support. No pressure, she wrote, no expectations, just a desire to contribute. It wasn't emotional, it wasn't a backdoor apology. It was clear, professional, and surprisingly humble. She even wrote, regardless of what happened before, I'm simply offering value where I can. There was no manipulation in the tone, no layered meaning, just sincerity. I didn't respond, not because I wanted her to hurt, not because I wanted her to wonder, but because I didn't owe her anything anymore. And that felt better than any perfectly worded rejection or power play response ever could. A few days later, one of our developers asked me something unexpected. We were standing by the coffee machine, and she said, "Hey Jason, how do you stay so calm all the time?" I looked up from my mug, caught off guard. "I heard you used to juggle 5 jobs," she said. "That true?" I laughed softly. "Yeah, that's true." She looked impressed. "So how'd you do it? How'd you survive that kind of burnout?" I stirred my coffee and thought for a moment. "Pain is a good teacher," I said. Then I looked at her and smiled. "But peace is the real prize." That night I went for a walk. No destination. Just me, the pavement, and the quiet hum of the city around me. It wasn't about clearing my head. It was about existing without tension, breathing without remembering the heaviness that used to follow me home. I passed a bookstore window and caught sight of a display, How to Let Go. I laughed. I didn't need that book. I was already living the answer. A few days later, I got a call from an old friend, someone from my past before all of it. She'd heard I was doing well. That phrase used to annoy me. Doing well always sounded like a polite deflection, but now it felt accurate. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I wasn't recovering or building from scraps. I was doing well. We agreed to meet up for dinner. Nothing romantic, just 2 people reconnecting, sharing space without pretense. When I saw her at the restaurant, something hit me. Her eyes didn't flick toward the door. She didn't keep her phone face down on the table, nervously checking it when I wasn't looking. She asked me questions, and she listened. It wasn't thrilling, it wasn't electric, but it was safe. And after everything I'd been through, maybe that's what I needed more than anything. Not fireworks, not chaos, just someone who showed up and stayed. I didn't think about Lily much after that, and when I did, it wasn't with anger or regret. It was with gratitude, not for what she gave me, but for what she took away. Because it was in her absence that I finally learned how to stand on my own, how to stop chasing closure and start living without needing approval, how to build something that couldn't be torn down by silence or absence or betrayal. I didn't need revenge, I needed freedom, and I had it now, not because of her, but because I chose to stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even notice the wound. And from that choice came everything else. Peace, growth, stability, a future that belonged entirely to me. Growth doesn't always come wrapped in inspiration. Sometimes it's carved out of betrayal, cut deep, messy, uninvited, and as strange as it may sound, I owe a part of who I've become to the pain Lily left behind. It's not that I'm grateful for the way she left. I'm grateful for who I had to become in the silence that followed, because what came next proved something more powerful than closure. I didn't just move on, I leveled up. It started with an unexpected phone call. I was reviewing a product roadmap when my assistant forwarded a client inquiry to my cell. "Hi," the voice said on the other end, warm and professional. "I was referred to you by Lily Whitmore." That name still had gravity, but it didn't sting anymore. "She mentioned you're one of the most grounded founders she's ever worked with," he added. There was a pause on his end. It was polite. On mine, stunned. "She said if anyone could help us scale securely and ethically, it'd be you." I thanked him, set up a discovery call for later that week, and ended the conversation. And then I just smiled. Not from arrogance, not from vindication, but from clarity. Because in that moment, I realized something that years of pain had tried to obscure. Lily finally saw what I had always been. Not her savior, not her emotional ATM, not a stepping stone or placeholder, a force of my own. Later that week, I ran into her again. This time, no grand conference room or professional tension, just a corner coffee shop on a rainy afternoon. No fanfare, no rehearsed speeches, just two people ordering caffeine in a line that moved slowly. She noticed me first, gave a slight nod, the kind that says I see you but not I need you. I nodded back, no words exchanged, no need for them, just a quiet, respectful acknowledgement. Two people with shared history, but completely separate futures. And honestly, that was enough. By now, Threadline had opened a second office in Austin. I was flying back and forth, learning how to scale something I used to dream about in basements and borrowed spaces. Somewhere between investor pitches and product reviews, I found something I hadn't had in years: balance. I started running again. No headphones, just the sound of my feet hitting pavement, a rhythm of forward motion. I started volunteering, helping high schoolers with college apps, fixing old tech for kids whose families couldn't afford anything else. And somewhere along the way, I stopped counting hours, stopped keeping track of who had hurt me and how long it had taken to recover. I wasn't living to prove anything anymore, not to her, not to anyone. I was just living. Then something happened that brought everything full circle. It was a Thursday. Most of the team had gone home, except for Mira, a junior developer we'd hired just a few months earlier. Smart, driven, too quiet. I passed her desk and noticed her staring blankly at her screen mouse, unmoving. "You good?" I asked, pausing beside her. She looked up, startled, then shrugged, eyes tired. "Just exhausted," she said. "My boyfriend's still in school and working nights. I'm picking up extra contracts so we can pay rent." Her voice cracked at the edges, the way voices do when someone's been holding too much in for too long. I nodded and sat on the edge of her desk. "I've been there," I said, "used to juggle 5 jobs for someone I thought would stay." She blinked. "Seriously? Dead serious? What happened?" I smiled, not out of bitterness, just the knowing kind. "She left when things got good for her," I said. "Didn't even say goodbye." Mira looked away for a second, and I saw something shift in her shoulders. "But that's not the point," I added. She turned back, listening. "The point is, what you give to someone else is not who you are, and you don't have to destroy yourself to be valuable." She nodded slowly, like those were words she hadn't just needed to hear, but had been waiting for. That night, as I sat on my balcony watching the city breathe below me, I realized something else. Maybe everything I went through with Lily wasn't just a lesson for me. Maybe it was something I needed to survive so I could help someone else avoid becoming me at my lowest. So I could be the one to say, you don't have to burn out to be loved. You don't have to shrink to be accepted. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. That's the legacy I want. Not just a company with awards on the wall or another office in another city, but clarity, peace, a version of power that isn't about controlling others, but about never losing control of myself again. So yes, a part of my success was shaped by Lily, by the hurt, the abandonment, the echo of betrayal. But what matters more is what I did with that pain. I didn't let it define me. I refined me. And from that refinement came something stronger than revenge. It came with grace, with wisdom, with the ability to look at someone who once shattered me and feel nothing but freedom. That's what healing looks like. And that's what I choose every single day. There's a strange kind of freedom that comes after you've had everything taken from you. When you've already been broken, humiliated, and forgotten, you start to realize something powerful. You have nothing left to fear, and that's when you start to live without apology. I didn't see Lily again for months after that coffee shop moment. There was no need to, no lingering attachment, just quiet detachment, like watching a movie you've already seen, knowing exactly how it ends. But her shadow appeared unexpectedly one day in a way I never imagined. It came in the form of a scandal. I had just wrapped a late call with a cybersecurity vendor when Renee, our legal advisor, knocked on my door. "You got a minute?" she asked, her voice lower than usual. "Sure," I said. "What's up?" She stepped in, closed the door behind her, and handed me her tablet. It was a news article, headline "Junior Partner at Grant and Whitmore under investigation for internal misconduct allegations." Below it, a familiar name, Lily Whitmore. My stomach didn't drop. My pulse didn't spike. I just stared at the screen, reading line by line, feeling strangely numb. Apparently, her new firm had accused her of ethical breaches, neglecting conflict of interest protocols in a major case, and misusing confidential data during a merger negotiation. She hadn't been fired yet, but she had been suspended. And in the legal world, suspension is the storm before the flood. Renee studied my face. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said slowly. "I didn't expect this, that's all. You two have a history, right?" I gave her a brief nod. "She's part of the reason I built this place." She nodded in return, respectfully silent. "I'll handle it," she said, and turned to leave. "Wait," I said. "Renee, do you believe the allegations?" She paused. "I don't know her, but I've seen people lose their moral compass when ambition gets louder than integrity." That line stuck with me. When ambition gets louder than integrity. That had been Lily's song all along. I just hadn't heard the lyrics until it was too late. I didn't reach out to her, didn't even consider it. It wasn't out of spite, it was out of self-respect. Once upon a time, I would have dropped everything to support her. Now I didn't even feel curious. But the universe in all its theatrical flair wasn't done with our story. 2 weeks later, I received a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. After a few minutes, I checked it. It was Lily. Her voice sounded broken, shaky, uncertain. "Hey Jason, I don't know if you'll even listen to this, but I guess I just didn't know who else to call. Everything's falling apart. I made mistakes. I know that, but I'm scared, and I guess I needed to hear a voice that once believed in me, even if that version of you doesn't exist anymore." Click. "No, please call me. No, I'm sorry. Just that." I listened to it twice, then deleted it, because that version of me, the one who believed in her blindly, endlessly, foolishly, he didn't exist anymore. Still, the message haunted me, not because I missed her, but because I saw a reflection of my past self in her voice, scared, alone, wrecked by her own choices. It made me wonder how many people out there were like us, how many stories started with sacrifice and ended in silence. One night, I opened a journal I'd kept during my 5-job hustle. The pages were filled with exhaustion, gratitude, desperation. But somewhere in the middle, I found a single line scribbled in bold ink. "Don't let what broke you define what you build." I had forgotten I wrote that, but reading it now in this new chapter of life, it became my compass again. That month, Threadline launched a new community initiative project, Rise. We funded tech scholarships for underprivileged students, offered free career mentoring to people juggling multiple jobs, even partnered with local clinics for free mental health workshops. Renee called it compassionate capitalism. I called it purpose. We weren't just building software. We were building second chances for the version of me that once needed one. One day, during a mentoring session, a young guy named Elijah came up to me after the group talk. He had oil on his shirt, tired eyes, and a nervous smile. "Mr. Aldrin," he said, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course," I said. "How did you forgive her?" The woman who left, I looked at him closely. There was a tremble in his voice that I recognized, the fresh sting of betrayal. I thought carefully before I answered. "I didn't forgive her at first," I said. "I tried to outwork the pain, tried to replace it, tried to erase it." He nodded slowly, but eventually I continued. I realized forgiveness wasn't about her. It was about freeing myself. I didn't do it to fix the past, I did it so it couldn't follow me anymore. He exhaled like he'd been holding that breath for days. "Thanks," he whispered. "That helps." That conversation stayed with me, because that was the moment I truly knew I had healed, not just survived, not just moved on, but actually healed. I could hear her name without flinching. I could recall the pain without bitterness. I could even wish her peace without needing her to know. The next time Lily called, I didn't answer. There was no malice in that choice. It was simply this: my story no longer belonged to her, and she no longer belonged in it. They say the past only haunts you if you leave the door cracked. Well, I had sealed mine shut, and for the first time I understood that peace doesn't come when you finally get an apology. It comes when you no longer need one. Lily tried to call twice more after that last voicemail. Each time I let it ring. Each time my phone went quiet, and each time I felt a little more certain that I had made the right choice. She didn't belong in this chapter, not in the margins, not in the footnotes, not even as a passing reference. Her role in my story had ended. I had simply turned the page. But the strange thing about growth is that it makes you grateful for the people who hurt you. Not because you miss them, but because they sharpened your vision, taught you how to set boundaries, showed you what love isn't. And I had learned every one of those lessons the hard way. A few weeks after ignoring her last call, I received a letter. Yes, a real physical letter. No return address. Just my name neatly printed on the front in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. I knew it was her the moment I saw the loop in the J. For a moment I considered tossing it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. Inside was a single-page handwritten note. Neat, measured, controlled, just like her. Jason, if this letter reaches you, I just want to say one thing I never had the courage to say when it mattered. Thank you. Thank you for seeing something in me when I didn't see it in myself. Thank you for believing in me when I was too immature to understand the cost. Thank you for not retaliating even when I deserved it. You didn't owe me anything, but you gave me everything, and I broke it. I've spent a long time wondering why I let that happen. Maybe I thought success would fill the hole inside me. It didn't. Maybe I thought walking away would free me. It didn't. I don't expect a response. I know you've moved on, but I needed you to know you changed my life. And I'm sorry I didn't change in time to deserve you. I hope you're happy. I hope you're free. Lily. I read it 3 times. The first time I felt a faint flicker of sadness, not for her, but for the younger version of me who had waited so long for words like those. The second time I felt nothing, just calm. And the third time I smiled, folded the letter, put it in a drawer, and never opened it again. Because the truth is, she was right. I was happy, and I was free. Not just from her, but from needing anyone's validation. That summer, Threadline hit a major milestone. We passed $5 million in revenue. I threw a rooftop party for the team. Music-catered food fairy lights strung across the skyline. People danced, laughed, talked about dreams, talked about futures. And for once, I didn't feel like I was playing catch-up. I wasn't surviving, I was thriving. During the party, one of our newer hires, a young guy named Rory, pulled me aside. I read your bio, he said. Saw how you started this thing. Yeah, I asked, sipping my drink. I just wanted to say thanks for building a place like this. It's rare. I smiled. It started as survival, I told him, but it became purpose. He nodded like he understood, and I think in his own way he did. The night wore on, and as people started to drift home, I found myself standing alone near the edge of the roof. I looked out at the city lights, thinking about how many nights I used to walk past the skyline, broke and exhausted, wondering if things would ever change. They had, but not because someone saved me, not because Lily came back. Things changed because I finally stopped waiting for someone else to give me worth. I built it, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice, lesson by painful lesson. And here I was, not the man she left, but the man I became because she did. A hand touched my shoulder. It was Renee. She smiled. You look like someone standing on the last page of a book. I laughed. Maybe I am. You ready to start the next one? I looked at her, really looked at her. She had been by my side for 2 years now. Loyal, sharp, unshakably kind. She wasn't Lily. She never tried to be, and that's what made her stand out. I think I already have, I said quietly. Because the truth is, revenge is temporary, closure is overrated, but becoming someone stronger, someone whole that lasts forever. There's something no one tells you about reaching the other side of pain. It's quiet, not triumphant, not cinematic, just quiet, like the world finally stopped screaming long enough for you to hear yourself think. 2 years after that rooftop party, I sat in a seat I never imagined I'd occupy, a guest lecturer at a local college. Not some glamorous role, just a guest speaker invited by a professor who followed Threadline's work and thought students could learn something from a guy who bootstrapped a tech company after hitting rock bottom. The class was called Ethics and Ambition in Professional Life. Fitting right, I stood in front of 30 wide-eyed 20-somethings, fresh ambition in their veins, dreams still unbruised by reality. And I told them the truth. I didn't tell them Lily's name, didn't name the pain, but I did tell them about the 5 jobs, the sleepless years, the breakdowns in silence, the heartbreak that started not with cheating or betrayal, but with being slowly forgotten. I told them how ambition without values can leave you with success and still feeling empty, and how love without respect is a transaction, one that always leaves someone bankrupt. When I finished, one of the students, young guy in a hoodie and scuffed up sneakers, raised his hand. "How did you forgive her?" I smiled. That question always came. "I didn't forgive her right away," I said. For a long time, I confused forgiveness with permission. I thought forgiving meant what she did was okay. But that's not what it means. The class fell silent. Forgiveness is about choosing not to carry something anymore. It's putting down the weight even if the scar stays. Another student, a woman with sharp eyes and a notebook full of underlines, asked, "Did she ever say sorry?" "She did," I nodded, years later, in a letter. "And did that make it easier?" I paused. "No," I said. What made it easier was realizing I no longer needed her to. That talk changed something in me. Not because I said anything profound, but because I heard myself tell my story out loud. And in that moment, I realized how far I'd truly come. After the class, I walked around the campus for a while. The air smelled like old books and hope. Students rushed past me with their headphones in their heads, buried in tomorrow. I found a bench under an elm tree and sat for a while just listening. And for the first time, I felt it, a sense of completion. Not bitterness, not vengeance, just peace. Later that week, I called my mom. We hadn't talked as often in those early years. I had been too busy trying to make everything work. But now, I had time. She picked up with a warmth I hadn't realized I missed. "Jason, baby." "You okay?" "Better than okay, Mom. You sound different." "I think I am." She laughed. "I always knew you'd land on your feet." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Thanks for never saying, 'I told you so.'" "Was tempted a few times," she said with a smirk in her voice. "But I figured you'd figure it out." We talked for an hour that night, about nothing and everything, and when I hung up, I realized something important. Healing doesn't just rebuild you, it reconnects you to family, to friends, to yourself. Weeks passed, I got back to work. Threadline kept growing. We launched a new division, hired our first international team, and finally made the Forbes Startups to Watch list. But none of that compared to what happened next. Renee and I were walking out of a team lunch one afternoon when she stopped abruptly. "What's wrong?" I asked. She hesitated. "I got a job offer." I froze. "Oh, it's in DC, she added. "Government Ethics Board." My heart twisted. "That's incredible," I said. "And also, terrible." She laughed. "I haven't accepted yet." "You should," I said, even though it hurt to say it. "I'm not going unless you say something." She said, teasing, but half serious. "Last chance." I looked at her, really looked. This woman had stood by me, supported me, never once asked for more than I could give, and never once made me feel like I wasn't enough. "You're amazing, Renee," I said, and I hope they know how lucky they'd be to have you." She smiled, still dodging. I laughed. I guess old habits die hard. She didn't take the job, not because I asked her to stay, but because she said, "I'm building something here, not just a career, a life." And for the first time, I let someone choose me without guilt. That was the biggest victory of all. One rainy afternoon, almost a year later, I got another letter. Same handwriting, same name. But this time I didn't open it. I placed it in the same drawer with the last one, and closed it gently. Some stories don't need new chapters. They need to stay finished. I don't tell people this often, but there was a time I didn't think I'd survive her leaving. Didn't think I'd ever trust again. Didn't think I'd ever be more than the guy who worked himself into the ground for a woman who walked away without blinking. But now I'm the man who rebuilt himself from that ground. Not for her, not even for revenge. For me. There's no parade for that kind of victory, no fireworks, just the quiet joy of waking up and knowing you're whole. You're free, and you finally belong to yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever loved someone who didn't love you back, if you gave too much to someone who gave you too little, I hope this story reminded you of your own strength. Comment below and share your own story. And don't forget to subscribe to Ethan's Way, where we tell the stories of what it really takes to break, rebuild, and rise.